Good morning all. Things are looking better today. It's not raining. I am going to try and get as far as Banbury if I can. That's a big stretch today, but I'm going to go for it. Right, well, we're on the road again, leaving just below Thrupp, heading for Banbury. Canopy down, hopefully it can stay that way. There's a lot of cloud around. It would be nice if we could keep the canopy down all day though, save faffing around under every bridge. Just a nice chat with this lady with the dog. She's on a boat further up. Here is a very typical scene on the Oxford Canal. Lots of moored boats and very narrow, but very scenic. So there's some longer term mooring here for 7 days if you should need it. And a couple of pubs, and coming up there's a lift bridge. That's going to be fun. So this is an electrically operated lift bridge, and I'm going to stop all the traffic. Ooh. Here we go. Key in, light it up, open the bridge. It's so much easier when you just press a button. Now just past the little bridge here at Thrupp, there's a great little services mooring where you can get water, empty your toilet out, pump out and all of that. So very handy. And they say you should never pass up an opportunity to fill up with water, so that is exactly what I'm about to do here. Always worth filling up whenever you get the chance, because you never know when you're next going to be able to stop. Or it might be horrible weather and you don't want to sit outside filling up and getting soaked. Here's the beautiful little canal side church in Thrupp. Very slow going to get through, and lots of low bridges. That's the Holy Cross Church. There you go. Open daily to visitors. This is an old stop lock. I think it would slam shut in the event of a breach somewhere. I think that's the idea. And stop the whole canal from emptying. These are the dredges we saw working yesterday in the rain. No longer owned by the Canal and Rivers Trust, or British Waterways or whoever. They're all private contractors these days. The CRT doesn't actually own very much plant anymore. Yeah, this looks dodgy as hell, to be honest. We will get under it, but it's tight. Now it's mid-July and the horseflies are very active at this time of year, so I strongly advise you to get yourself some insect repellent, because if you don't you're going to get bitten, and horsefly bites are not pleasant. Now this is a slightly unusual lock. It's the Shipton lock, and above it is Shipton Weir, and this is where the River Cherwell joins the canal, and you go along the path of the river. As you can see, that's the canal back there, and up there the wider river. And the lock itself is a funny basin shape. You can get quite a few boats in there, sort of 3 or 4 narrow boats at least, 3 at least, as long as they're not too long. So these lock gates were built at Bulbourne, British Waterways Board, 1999, 20 years ago. There aren't many Bulbourne gates left now. They're starting to be seen less and less on the canal system because the Bulbourne works closed. And the gates aren't made there anymore, haven't been for a while, so you won't see many Bulbourne gates anymore. It's quite sad really. Bit of history, part of the Canal and Rivers Trust's policy of selling off their works and contracting the work to private contractors. and this is leakage through the top gates at the Shipton Lock. It's very bad. I mean, it's all very well installing nice digital boards to warn people about the river conditions, but if you can't get through the lock because the gates are leaking so bad, it's not much use, is it? That is really terrible. So you have to squeeze yourself in this gap to get the gates open, and it's a bit of a heave with all that water coming through the top gate, but just about doable. And I'm no 8-stone weakling either. Here we go. Oh! There's a lot of pressure still on the gate. The lock was rebuilt in 1921, that's 98 years ago. The canal's very windy here, even though this part of the canal is actually a river. But the Oxford was originally a contour canal. It was started in the 1760s. So rather than build lots of locks, which was technically very difficult for them at that time, they built the canal to follow the contours of the land, so it didn't have many locks. Large sections of this canal were actually converted to having locks in to save distance travelled later on, and they used a lot of Napoleonic war prisoners of war to build these canals in the 1790s onwards. So yes, slave labour basically. The navvies, the navigators that built the canals. And then a few years later the railways came along and ruined it all, and there's the railway. Just grab a quick look at the British Waterways sign. They're all being replaced with the new blue, well, that's a very old sign, but they're all being replaced with the new blue logos. Oh, there's someone coming down the lock. How handy. A lot of dust coming across the field there, probably harvesting. Oh. And we're coming up to another lock. These big satellite dishes over in the distance, radio communications dishes behind the trees there. So we're now through Baker's Lock and heading on up. It's a very typical scene of the Oxfordshire countryside that you'll see going along the Oxford Canal, fields of wheat, rural scenes like this, the heart of England, very lovely. It's actually amazing how much industrial building has remained alongside the canal, and small industrial units like this, because this must be in the middle of nowhere relating to any town. But here we've got a roofing company, and there's an old canal side wharf building that's obviously being used as a home now. But industry remains quite intense along the canal side, wherever you are on the canal network. Something worth pointing out, there's no point in trying to hurry along here. I've mentioned that before, but if you run your engine hard and push the boat along, all you do is burn more diesel. The boat won't really go much faster. This wide section, it's okay, but as soon as it gets narrower, like a bit up ahead, where those reeds come across the canal, you'll find that you're just pushing water out of the way, and once you've got a certain amount of water in front of you, the boat just won't go any faster. So you can actually see at the edge here the water moving as the boat comes past, even in this wider section, and it'll get worse, this water coming past the bank here, and we're pushing that in front of us, and then it's coming through the sides because it's so shallow it can't get underneath the boat. So I've got my rev set at 2000 and I'm doing about 3.5 miles an hour. If I went any faster, if the engine went any faster, I wouldn't really go any faster, I'd just burn a lot more diesel. So small narrow canals, just take it easy, there's no point in trying to hurry. Enjoy the scenery, it's beautiful. It's a fairly typical lock on the Oxford Canal. Single gate each end. walk over bridge each end, ground paddles at the top, gate paddles at the bottom. This is Pigeons Lock. Now I have to climb up that to operate the lock. So if you walk across the footbridge at Pigeons Lock, there's a post office, stores and a pub. The Oxford Arms along this way somewhere. But I'm going to press on for Banbury. So usually you'll find that opening the paddles allows the water under the boat, which then pushes it forwards in the lock. You need to be very careful not to slam into the sill there. Once you're well above the sill, which we will be in a minute, you're safe. Just look at the state of that beam that's holding this lock sealed. I mean, it's got virtually no wood left in it. That's going to fail at some point. Can you get tea here then?
Yeah, as well.
So here above Pigeons Lock there's a little cafe. That looks lovely. Flower is the narrowboat moored up there. And just a little bit further along we could be in the 1950s with a Morris Minor and a grey Fergie tractor in the garage. The trailer kind of spoils it, but never mind. It's recently become CRT policy to plant reeds all along the banks in a lot of places. And to be honest, I mean, it's to encourage wildlife is normally the idea, and you know, that's a good thing obviously, but it's madness because they expect them to stay like this, where you can see now. But what actually happens is they grow out into the canal, and they grow further and further out into the canal until they basically block the canal. And you can see up ahead it's really quite narrowed by the reeds, and they're only kept under control by boats going through constantly. And through the winter, okay, they don't grow as fast, but they're going to find themselves in 5 years' time having to do reed trimming and cutting them back. And once you've put them in, that's it. You can't get rid of them. There's no way you can get them out. They are here for good, and they will grow and grow and grow across the canal until it's no longer navigable. I think it's a mad idea. It means that towpaths obscured in places, the canals blocked in places. Very, very foolish policy, I think. See, for example, look at this. The only reason that there's actually a navigation here is because of all the boats going through and chopping the reeds up, and that's why they haven't grown here. Here's one form of vegetation that the Canal and Rivers Trust are quite happy to get rid of occasionally. This is hogweed, and it's very toxic and causes all kinds of issues. People get horrible burns off it. So they've come along and cut it back a bit here along this section where it's taken hold. Often you do see it growing quite big though, this hogweed. So steer clear of this if you see it, it's nasty. Right, I've just been warned by two walkers on the towpath that this boat up in front that you can see there, not going anywhere, is aground. So I'm going to give them a hand and see if I can help pull them off. It looks as though somebody else has got involved, so I'll hold off. Actually, I might pull in and see if I can afford them any assistance. Sorry to go on about the reeds, but I came through here last year and it was nowhere near this bad. I mean, it really wasn't. This is much worse than it was last year. The reeds are much more dense, they've grown out much further into the canal. So it's my opinion that it's a very bad idea to be growing all these reeds along the canal banks. Really not clever at all. Now some of the locks on the Oxford Canal are quite deep, like this one here that we're coming up to. The Somerton Deep Lock is the deepest, but this is 9 foot, Somerton's over 12. So hopefully they'll come through and leave the gate open for me. It looks like a day trip boat, so I don't know if they will, but I hope they do. I've got a team of helpers in this one. Look at that. Flying up. Not often you get so much assistance. Not often I get to film on the boat when I'm on my own either. It's interesting actually, there's been no other boats going up that I've seen, but there's been a lot coming down, which means all the locks are ready for me, and I haven't had to turn any of them round. I've been able to, apart from locks that fill themselves up, I've been able to drive straight in, which has been very handy. Just past this amazing tree house that someone obviously built for their kids a very long time ago. It's now falling to pieces, sadly, and the trees growing through the roof. So now there's another boat in front of me, and there's another boat in front of them, and we're going to get to the next lock, and it's going to be our first queue. So each boat taking 10 minutes to get through, that's half an hour to get through the next lock instead of the normal 10 minutes. That's often the way it is on the Oxford Canal. It's been very bad coming the other way actually. There's been a lot of boats queuing coming down, but nothing coming up so far. I've not had a single boat in front of me, and now I have. So that's just the way it goes, isn't it? Up on the hill there you can see the village of Hayford, the church and the old barn. That still looks as though it belongs to a farm. You can see that up there. Very scenic. So we weren't sure if this would work because they are 43 foot and I'm 32 foot. But with the bow and stern overlapping, we've managed to get these two boats into one 72 foot lock. The strange way that the Canal and Rivers Trust works. They've got lovely new blue signs up in lots of places, but here's a broken walkover bridge that could kill someone if they went over it. Yeah, sure, it's got a sign on saying beware, do not use, but what's the use of that? Just fix the damn thing. We've managed this two boats in a lock twice now, but sadly these chaps are stopping at Somerton for lunch and I'm going on up through Somerton Deep. So I've enjoyed it, it's been great cruising with them, and I hope they get to wherever they're going and get their boat blacked fine, because that's what they're off to do, and I'll just keep on going. You can actually see where the old stone edge of the canal has crumbled and fallen in. It's very shallow back there. Those flies annoying you, are they? Along a lot of the Oxford Canal, they've given up repairing the stone edging and let it fall in, which is a real pain because you can run into the stones when you're mooring up on the side in a lot of places. And just up there, that bank you can see is the railway. Often the old railways were built right alongside the contour canals because the early steam engines weren't powerful enough to pull up any kind of slope. So they followed the contour canals and of course were direct competition for them as well, leading to their rapid demise in many places. So often you do see the railway alongside the canal. And well, here we are in most beautiful England. The rolling hills, the woods, the fields. It's just lovely. There's a rather spectacular bull. He's a fine chap. The cows in this field are pointing the same way. I'm sure that means something, but I can't remember what. Like it's going to rain or something like that. No longer peak season for dragonflies, but there's still quite a few of them around. There's a lot of common blue damselflies around. They're my favourites. Every now and then you come across one of these signs, which is a bit of an oddity really, because anyone here is going to be on the canal. They're going to know it's the Oxford Canal. I mean, they're very nice. I don't quite know what they're for, but yeah, to tell us that we're on the Oxford Canal. Hello. We're on the Oxford Canal, definitely. So this is Somerton Deep Lock, which at 12 foot, over 12 foot, is the deepest lock on the Oxford Canal. And just look at the size of that gate. Deep Lock. Yeah, it's a long way down there. You wouldn't want to fall in, would you? And it is deep. I'm just going to walk back across now. And there's the idyllic little lock cottage. And this beautiful view. Well, I know this is a very wide angle lens, but the balance beams on these locks are huge. Huge, tall gates that weigh more than your average lock, so they have a huge balance beam to make it easier to open them. The first year I came into this lock, 4 years ago, the gate wouldn't open fully and I got stuck trying to get out of it going downstream, going the other way, and eventually I took a big run up from the back of the lock and I did get through. I didn't get jammed in it. Right, time for me to get the boat and get in there. Right, when you make a spectacular entrance into here, all rebuilt in 1977. Just look at that. And you can see the ladder on the left hand side I've got to climb out of. There's my ladder. Right. Who fancies climbing up that? With one hand holding the windlass. If you ever slip while you're climbing up that ladder, it's going to end in tears. The boat is dwarfed in the lock. Again, I've only done one of the paddles because I want to be able to control the boat, and it could be a bit much if it's both of them open, holding her still. You don't want them slamming into either of the gates. That's the way to break things on the boat or in the lock. Yeah, here's a really bad infestation of giant hogweed. It's really taken over the bank here. There's the odd patch where there isn't any, but most of the bank up here and way into the distance is covered with it. And if I go back to Reading by train, I'll probably be going over that viaduct. And it takes about 45 minutes to get back to Reading, which has taken me 4 days by boat from Banbury to Reading. 40 minutes versus 4 days. Is a very old working boat that's been converted into a leisure boat, but you can see the old plated riveted hull. Some modern boats have fake rivets on them, but that is genuine, an old worker. Lovely. Hope you can see it in the distance. That's Ano Wharf, boatyard and shop, so there's plenty of things to do, buy there, food, diesel, etc. if you should need it. Little tiny moorhen chicks. This must be a second clutch, we're into July. The first ones will have come out in April, May. This is another one of those wide chambered locks, the Ano weir lock. So obviously we're joining a river system again here, and you can see there's a very long weir or sluice just in front of us. I'll show you that as we go through, once we're through the lock. This is the bridge over the top of the weir at Ano. This is an unusual one, an Elbridge Lock. Obviously there's a new bridge in front of the old bridge in front of the lock here. To do this lock you have to leave your boat, and if you're on your own I'd suggest locking it up, and you have to walk up the path here and cross the main road over to the other side, cross the lock as well to do the lock. So beware, it's a very busy main road and the cars come flying along here at 60 miles an hour. Strange old lock this. Through the bridge into the lock. Up until now, every lock I've come to, the water's been spilling over the overspill. And as you can see, this one, there's no water running over the overspill. And someone did say to me that as you get up towards the summit, it's very shallow, 8 inches down. 8 inches down is a lot for a canal. So we'll have to progress carefully so as not to run aground when we get up there. I've now got to fill this lock, which is going to drop the level there even more. This looks like the remains of some old CRT yard, British Waterways yard. There's a turning point here, winding hole. But yeah, there's some old workboats and yard area. Looks very much as though it might once have been a canal side yard belonging to the Canal and Rivers Trust. And this is the pig place, moorings and canal side camping, etc. Well, you can see what they've got here, including a hot tub. So it's like a farm shop and a farm and a campsite and a few moorings. Way over in the distance there's a church spire. I think that's Kings Sutton. We get a bit nearer in a bit. Well, this thing right in front of us is the Coles Lift Bridge 183. Obviously that's not the M40 bridge, but very obviously also the one just in front of us is the M40 bridge. It's actually amazing to think that the railways originally destroyed the profitability and the traffic on the canals, and yet here's the canal still here, and many of the railways were actually taken down in the 50s and 60s by beaching. So yeah, they could have left the bridge up, couldn't they? A lot of those old railways have been turned into walkways and trailways, but the canal is still here. Approaching Kings Sutton Lock, which is northwest of Kings Sutton, and I'm hoping this is going to be my last one for today, because I think I've had enough. I've been going since 8 and it's now coming up to, was it 5:30, 6 o'clock? Now if I remember correctly, this is quite a deep one, as you can see. So there's a really nice little stop here, a little canal side warehouse, and there it is, Kings Sutton. Long since disused by the Canal and Rivers Trust, but I do love the sign and the old canal side warehouse. And if you can see where the water's pouring out of the side of the lock in the brickwork, but you want to make sure that doesn't go in your deck. It can be very messy if it does. They're called piddlers, I've heard. Some people call them piddlers in the past, and they do piddle into your boat if you get it wrong, if you're in the wrong place. Well, this is another really quite deep one. It's 10'8", so maybe not quite a Somerton Deep, but still very deep. In we go. Another big ladder to climb. Well, I'm planning on mooring up on the Armco just past the lock there, after the lock lay-by. That's me done for the day, and I'll get going early in the morning again and get to Banbury and we'll be on Banbury, and then think about coming back on the train to get the van tomorrow.